Okay, now we'll start talking about mature size, and people getting a lot of trouble over this, but it's mostly because they just don't know. You know, the plant tags at the nursery may be misleading, they just don't know, or they have bought a new house and they didn't plant the plants themselves and not really sure what's going to happen with these things. So, you know, you get something that's small, and if it doesn't die, it's going to grow. But at some point in time, it's going to get to be way too big. I got a lot of pictures of this. So crepe myrtles. That's terrible. That's terrible. So sometimes they think, well, it's too big. We'll cut them back. Okay. Well, you can buy crepe myrtles that mature at 4 foot tall, up to 30 foot tall. So you can pick a crepe myrtle for that spot. It never has to be pruned. We also think, well, if we cut it back, since it blooms on new growth, we'll have more flowers. That's not true. So we've got crepe myrtles in our office. So several years ago, we did that. So we murdered one of them. It bloomed later than the ones that weren't pruned, and it bloomed less. So in fact, you're not gaining anything by doing this. Unfortunately, this is what people see. This is what they do. And it happens all the time. It's aggravating. So if it's too big, so if you have picked the species or a variety is too big, and we've done this too, cut it off at ground level and regrow the thing. So we've got one, the existing row is 18 feet tall. So 4 or 5 years ago, we cut one all the way to the ground. It sprouts, you can't hardly kill them. And now we've got a new crepe myrtle about 8 foot tall. And we maintain it at 8 foot. Filling out the branches is fine. You don't have to do that. Okay, here. So start looking at landscape. So this is a house. The landscapes have been there for years. And when it was planted, it probably was pretty good. So you've got colors and textures and different things going on there. Obviously, whoever lived there didn't like the prune. So now the stuff is grown. So the whole front porch is covered over. The windows are covered over. So what do you do at this point in time? You cut it back hard, and you could. So broadleaf evergreens, you can prune those hard. They'll come back out, not a problem. But then you got to prune these things 2 or 3 times a year, or you go right back to there. Or do you yank it all up and start over? Here's a situation where you've got a new house, new spec house, and they've been to the landscaper, been to the nursery and saw the variegated privet. Like we looked at before, so you got the little one, medium, and this one here. So they're trying, this is a big house, big 2-story house there. So they're trying to get some impact there from the landscaping there. So they're buying these things because it's a 3-gallon plant. They got some size to it, so you're getting some show there in front of the house. Is that a good plant for a foundation plant in front of that porch? We're back to the same thing here. So they've seen that. Oh, we're going to buy that because that's going to give us some show. Okay. Here's another house here. They got 3 of these things underneath the window. How big will variegated privet get to be?
How big they want it.
Yes. 10, 12, 14 foot. I mean, they can get some size on them. That's variegated privet there. Probably easily 16 feet tall. So is that a good foundation plant? If you like to prune a lot, you want to prune, you could do that. But now, that being said, in the right place, it's a very nice plant. So here's one that made it to a tree farm. And the picture doesn't do it justice. It's beautiful yellow color. I mean, as a small tree, and that's what it is. It's not a foundation shrub, it's a small tree. As a small tree, that's outstanding. So right plant, right place, beautiful. It's not a foundation plant, though. But I got a little holly in the corner there. What kind of holly is that?
Nellie Stevens.
Nellie Stevens. People love a Nellie Stevens holly. They put them everywhere.
Yes, they do. That's why I guess that.
Everywhere. Go on beside the air conditioner there, and it's close now. And how big will Nellie Stevens holly get to be? 20, 25 feet tall. I'm not sure that was a good plant choice for that particular location. Oh, and then there's Stevens Hollow there on the corner, and the plants in the front are Laurel Petalum.
Yeah.
Laurel Petalum can get big, too, give it a chance. So there's another Stevens Hollow there, and you can kind of see the little Cushman thing there. So this thing is easily 20 feet tall. Is that a good foundation plant? Probably not so much. Here, so you might see, you see my mirror there? So a lot of these pictures are drive-bys. So I see this house. This is the neighborhood where we live. So we're walking. I'm getting my exercise in with my wife. And walk by down and see this house. I need a picture of that. But I can't walk by the house with the camera. But I'm afraid I'm going to get caught. And I got to explain what am I doing, taking a picture of your landscape. So I'm taking this picture there. So you look at that. So those plants there in front of the front porch, you know what that is?
Is it a law?
It's a Chindo viburnum. Chindo viburnum.
Huge.
Right. But see, now this is, I'm sure the landscaping was done by the landscapers, new house there. They just picked the same thing, big plant, small pot. And planting there, people who live there, they don't know. And right now, I guess it's okay, but you know, so this Chindo viburnum is there, so that thing is 12, 14 feet high, and it's not fully grown. So not a good foundation plant there at all. We talked about trees. So we'll talk about trees some here. So look at these trees and go, well, that's kind of strange, kind of a flat top look with those trees. And you look at the power line and go, oh. This is down in Ashboro. It's a chain restaurant, so they have had a landscape designer or architect, all plans. You got the landscaper come in there to plant it. It was approved by the planning board, council department, whatever it is. Somebody never looked up. In any case, they're way too close together. This oak, scarlet oak, probably, this oak tree, way too close together, and then directly under power lines. So they have pruned these things for years. Continue to come in there and prune these things. Of course, you know, when we're paying our utility bills, we're paying for this pruning. At some point in time, somebody needs to say, bad plant choice. Yes, ma'am. You could do a crepe myrtle, Coosa dogwood, red bud. I mean, there are lots of choices of trees. I think I actually have a list in here that are perfectly fine with power lines. It won't be a problem. Oak is not one of those. All right, we'll move to Burlington. So that tree there, that's a willow oak. How big will willow oaks get to be?
Oh,
Big trees, big tree. Is that a good street tree? I don't think so. Okay, oh, you got a power line. Think that's going to be a problem? So there's a whole row of these. This is down where the target is. A whole row of willow oaks underneath the power line. So I fussed at the Burlington planning people, like, really, you approved this plan? I'd be glad to look at it if you want me to. This is terrible. So at some point in time, they're going to have to do something with that. So now they cut these things off. So how many years are they going to have to head off these willow oaks? Forever. Until they cut them down. So it's a constant problem. They just keep, you know, they're rolling the wire all the time. They have to keep cutting back. I don't understand. People just don't look up for some particular reason at all. Red maple. Underneath power lines there. Again, a tree that's not compatible with power lines, 40, 50 foot, 60 foot tall tree. The good news here, if there is good news, is these trees have blooming scale. So one thing you'll learn, have you had the insect class yet, Ashley? Okay, did you hear about blooming scale?
Yes.
So red maples in urban settings are predisposed to bloomy scale. So it's a scale insect and eats these things up. So hopefully in a short period of time, these trees will be dead and be gone for both underneath the power lines there. So we're seeing more and more of this gloomy scale, so not really a problem out in the woods, but in an urban setting, street trees, gloomy scale is eat these things up.
Is the scale the rough?
Yeah. All this 10 million little bumps
Okay.
are the scale disease.
Did you say gloomy?
Gloomy.
Gloomy.
Gloomy scale, right. Very difficult to control. Dormant oil sprays work okay. There are some systemic insect treatments, but that's a whole other problem. So systemic insecticides can be a real issue with our pollinators, so I'm not a fan of that. In that case, I'd just assume the tree died because it's in the wrong place anyway. So here's a publication here. So there is a whole list of trees that you can plant underneath utility lines or are compatible, not going to be too big, way too fine, with red maple, willow oaks, not on the list at all. Okay. So perhaps the worst example I've ever seen, so Leyland cypress. Leyland cypress surrounding this house on all, both sides and the back, all three sides, planted 4 or 5 feet together. At this point in time, my wife's driving me so you can see our East Carolina.
You're on the passenger side.
Yeah, that's really better. It's hard to drive, take pictures at the same time. But she drives some, and she's driving there. So we're looking at this. That is horrific. Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. So here, you see how close the houses are together. So setback is 12 or 15 feet. A fence would have been appropriate there. So the Leylands now are 25, 30 feet tall. What happens when they get bagworms? Can you spray those trees? Yeah.
A good ice storm.
Yeah. Well, you could get a machine, but typically I found that people really don't want to have their children and pets sprayed with pesticide. So there's no way to spray those trees without getting drift in the neighbor's house. So you can't spray. Canker diseases, root rot. At some point in time, these things are coming out, and it's going to cost somebody $100. So there's over 100 trees around this house. The people who live there, the elderly lady, she's passed, and they've sold it to a new couple. I don't think they understand, but the house over here on the left-hand side, that whole side of the house is covered in mold and mildew because it's shaded all the time. It's nasty. It's a problem. So you mentioned ice. What happens in an ice storm? That's what happens. So the tree fell. So this is the back yard neighbor. One of the trees fell and crushed his shed. He's got a $1,000 deductible, so it cost him $1,000 out of pocket to fix that. They had words about the trees. Trees are still there, but at some point in time they're going to go away. Also, as you see the ice there going toward the neighbor's house, really, really bad plant choice there. And it's going to cost somebody a fortune to get rid of these things and plant them. So in a lot of cases, a fence is better than trying to plant a hedge, especially a hedge of Leylands. So I don't recommend planting Leylands anywhere anymore. They just got too many problems.
Could you even get the root system out without disturbing the foundations of the houses on these things?
It would be tricky. It'd be tricky. Now, I have to say, I was at NC State in the 70s with Dr. J.C. Ralston. At that point in time, Leyland cypress was the plant. And we promoted them. We thought they were the best things since sliced bread. But you get 40 years down the road, and you go, oh, maybe not so much. So we don't know. Things are planting now that seem great. May not be. You get 40 years, it won't be for me 40 years. But at some point in time, these plants that we're planting now may be a problem. Okay. So we're still trying to find right plant, right place, and this is really important. So the ideal situation is if we pick the right plant, we don't have these problems. We're not pruning all the time. They're not going to die. Not going to make our neighbors mad. It's just going to be better for us all the way around. So pruning. There are some people love to prune. And they'll make a little meatball out of everything in the yard. Got those electrical grass shears and just buzz everything. Oh, there's a reason to prune. Sometimes you need to, but not all the time. So, what is that plant right there? Can anybody guess? I know you can't guess. That is a Japanese maple.
Well, that is interesting.
Yeah. So this is a church in Burlington. I had gone by there, looked at something else, and so I'm walking around the building, and the landscaper guy there, he's got the gas-powered trimmers, and he's making balls out of everything. And I'm like, that's a Japanese maple. And he's done this over the years, just has, it seems like the wrong thing to do.
Didn't know you could.
But, you know, people want to do that, so that, we don't recommend that at all. Now, we'll talk about tools. We need to turn some more lights on Ashley for tool talking. I'm going to show tools. So if you're going to work in the yard, you've got to have tools. Thank you. So I don't golf or anything like that, so I like to just work in the yard. So I'm going to have a nice tool because I can. So, you know, back in the day, we all had these anvil pruners. So the blade comes down on the flat part there. You know, if it's fairly sharp, it does okay. But a lot of times it just pinches the branch. It doesn't really cut it good, so it's not something that we would use anymore. These are a pair of Corona hand pruners. You can tell these are at least 25 years old, but still do a pretty good job. The trick is they got to be sharp. And so I sharpen all my tools, hand pruners, blockers with a file. People have a tendency to go, oh, that's going to be too much. I've sharpened these for 20, 25 years with a file. You're not taking off that much metal. The trick is to follow the bevel on the cutting edge. You don't sharpen the hook, and you don't sharpen the back. Now, you might make a pass across that in case there's a burr there, but really you're just going to sharpen that cutting edge there. And the file does a really great job, and it won't hurt the pruners. When I'm out there in the field, especially when I'm doing orchard pruning like I was yesterday, I got my pruners sharp to start with, but I've got a real nice little sharpening tool here. So it's a Corona. It's got a carbide metal tip on it. So I can carry this in my pocket and really just basically go out there and make some passes across the cutting edge while I'm pruning to keep that edge sharp. Nothing's worse than a dull pair of pruners. That works very, very well. It's easy, convenient, easy to carry, works great. I did move up, got a pair of Velcros. These are fairly expensive pruners, but they're good.
Those ones from Switzerland? Are those made in Switzerland?
Could be, possibly. Yes. It says Swiss made. Yeah. So the advantage of these is the metal is really, really good. And so that's the difference between these and a cheap pair of pruners. So you can buy a cheap pair of pruners for $10. You can get it good and sharp. After about the second or third cut, that metal edge is going to roll over. It won't stay sharp. It won't keep the edge. Well, this has really good metal. It'll stay sharp for a long, long time. And it's easy to resharpen it. And really good. The pruner's got a nice handle on them. I like these very much.
What's the brand? What's the?
Felco.
Felco.
F-E-L-C-O. Felco.
About 80, 70 bucks.
Yep.
It's a really nice pruner. They do have some that have a rotating handle, and I never have liked those. It's something that I don't care for that, but they have those, but I don't really care for rotating.
Is there any use for the animals type at all?
No.
I heard one time.
I just use it
For
for something.
deadwood. Are they not good even for deadwood?
What's that?
Anvil?
No.
Okay.
Not good for it. Show and tell. That's all they do. Okay. So that's hand pruners. Then we'll move into pruning saws. So you got a pruning saw. This pruning saw here is at least 40 years old. It's not a bad saw. The problem is when I've got it in my tool bag, invariably, when I go to pull it out, I grab the teeth, and that's very uncomfortable. The first pruning saw that I got that was good, this Corona brand. This is a very nice saw, very inexpensive, very sharp, and it does a really good job. And you can lock the handle. You won't cut your hand pulling it out, and that's really nice. Next I got, this is a Silky. You heard of Silky saws? So the tree fruit specialist, Dr. Mike Parker, he likes Silky saws. So I got one of these Silky saws. This is really good. So this is Japanese made. It's extremely sharp. You can see the end of this got broke off. So we had an ice storm 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm going to work, and there's about a 10-inch pine tree across the road. There's traffic both ways, 6 blocks, and everybody's just stuck. I cut the tree apart with this saw, and I had a trucker help me. He stuck it into the asphalt and broke the end off. But we got the tree cut.
And you got a story.
Yeah. S-I-L-K-Y. So, very good. Then I moved up. That's a good saw. It's not, for me, the blade is not quite long enough. If you're cutting a fairly big branch, it's hard to just gnaw at it. So I got one. So this is the big boy. So that with a bigger branch, it's easier to cut because you don't have to. You can do a little bit longer stroke on it. Again, very sharp and really nice. The problem with this is it's hard to carry. So I try to put this in my back pocket and walk around. It's just too big, so I don't use that much anymore.
What brand was that?
Silky, they're all silky. Right. So once I got on the Silky, I just stayed with Silky. I've got 5 or 6 of them now. Just got this one. This is shorter, hadn't been broken on the end, and it's a straight blade. Where this other one here is curved. So in some places, the curved blade is hard to get into a real tight spot. So the straight blade is a little bit better to work with in a tighter place. And this one carries pretty good. I used this on Peachtree yesterday. That's right.
Are you concerned how many teeth it has?
These are all large. So this is 8 or 10 per inch. This is a medium. I think it's like 12 per inch. So generally speaking, the large or extra large teeth are best for greenwood pruning.
How do you sharpen?
These cannot be sharpened. Right. There's no sharpening this the way it's made. You can't sharpen. But you know it's okay. This Corona one's 15 years old. It's still sharp. I've never sharpened it, so you don't have to worry about sharpening. And you can buy a replacement blade fairly inexpensively, so don't worry about that. And then I got a little. This is called a pocket blade. That's brand new. I haven't used it yet, but I don't know why not.
I'm so excited about it.
Then for big stuff, we move up. That's a saw. So really, anything 6-inch diameter or less, I can cut this faster than you can go get your chainsaw and draw it and crank it.
Wow.
This thing will burn through a branch in just a minute. It's really.
So what would the cost be? What would the cost of?
This one's about $100. These are probably 50, so depending on the size that it is. And the little one was 40.
They're professional grade though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What's that picture?
Yeah, but you know, I figured I don't golf. I gotta have 2. And really, the thing that's 40 years old. I've had these things for a long time, so I figured I can keep the rest of my life. I don't let my son use them, but you know, they're good saws. Now you can also have a place where it's really difficult to get to, and it may be a case where you want to have a battery saw like this. I use this a lot on crepe myrtles when you've got 15 stems all close together, and you can buy a pruning blade that fits on a reciprocal saw.
Really?
Yes, so they sell these at Lowe's. Work great, so you get in a really tight space. This is a very small blade. You can get in there, and don't have to worry about trying to draw it back and forth. The machine does work for you. It's a really handy thing to have.
Does it accept that?
This is D-Walk, but you can get all kinds of brands. What's that? This is reciprocating saw. Saw does. But it works really good. All right. So that's that. All right. So we go into lockers.
Yeah.
So you need a good pair of lockers. I like this because you can extend the handle. So if you want to be more reach.
That is nice.
But
We're
if you're doing a lot of pruning like this down here, it ends up. So it's okay for do 2 or 3 things like that. You've got to have the reach, but just for regular pruning, it's just awkward as heck. So I don't use that very little at all. I did buy. That's a Felco, and I thought, yeah, that's a neat little thing. You never use these printers. Never use them all. What I ended up
It would
with.
be a little more ergonomically, a little easier than even on some of the bigger braces. Of course, I'll go at anything with the bypass pruners, but that's pretty cool. Big lockers.
Yeah, that's my favorite. This is a Hickok, Hickok, made in USA. This is the finest lopper you can buy, hands down. Excellent metal, keeps a good edge, aluminum handles. The problems you have with these and wooden handles is when you really bear down on it, the handles will flex. So you lose your power in flexing the handle. These aluminum handles here won't bend. All the power goes to the cutting edge.
How much are those for?
80? About $80. Pretty much anything I can hook, I can cut. So this, I was cutting peach branches yesterday, 1.5 inch diameter, like very sharp, excellent. And what I like about this is, if I'm doing roses, cutting them back, I don't have to bend over. I can reach all the way almost to the ground. So that's the advantage of having a long handle versus a short handle there. Those were excellent. Actually, I got 2 pairs of them. All right. That's good. Okay. We'll move on to pole pruners, but I don't do ladder. I'm 80 out of the ladder business. I've got this extendable, which is, this is not bad. The problem is, if you're really sawing on something hard, you can't tighten that enough to keep that thing from sliding back and forth. So I got this. I got a 3-piece set. This is a fiberglass handle, 8 foot long, and it has interchangeable heads that goes here, so I can go up to 24 feet or more with that. It's got a real nice lopper head. So that fits them onto the end of that pole. So this one has a saw blade that goes with it, but it just ties into this wing nut there. So when you've got that, you can't do lopping. It's either going to be sawing or lopping. You can't do both. With this, I can change. Actually, with my 3 poles, I put this on one pole and saw head on another pole there. But that's a really nice lopper. It works very, very well.
What brand is that one?
I think Jameson, so there's a place in Greensboro called Cheryl Tree, so it's an arborist supply place. And a lot of the stuff I'll order from them, and you might probably can find it on Amazon too as well. Then I got saw blade. This is a silky saw blade that goes on the pole, so I can easily cut off pretty good sized branches up in the tree without having to climb or ladder or anything there. So you gotta have tools. If you go do it. Yes. Yeah. So it's got a slip here, so it goes, and there it is going.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's not like that where the handles come apart.
Yeah.
It's like that, so it won't slide.
How many toys do we have?
Hmm?
How many toys do we have?
Manana.
You need some toys. And when I say toys, I mean tools. I mean, seriously, if you're doing pruning
Yeah.
demonstration, you can't be out there with some Walmart pruner to do a decent job. You know, you need to invest in these things. And really, I mean, it's an investment. So there's a lot of money here, but these things will last me for years and years. And it makes pruning a lot easier than trying to fight with some that's not working.
How do you maintain, do you use lubricating oil or spray or anything?
Not so much.
I just wondering if it can be-
Yeah, so, you know, ideal situation, you can look at these things and see, I'm not taking care of these,
Yeah.
so I should be cleaning them and oiling them and whatever, but these bags stay in the back of the truck, and sometimes they get wet, and they get rusted and whatever. I don't care too much.
Yeah.
Every now and then I put a little WD-40 on them.
That's what I was wondering.
Main thing is, it's just sharp. The rust doesn't really hurt. Also, I don't disinfect them. People talk a lot about disinfecting pruners. If you've got one plant, you can disinfect it. If you're pruning 50 peach trees, they're not disinfecting those. It's an orchard. They're pruning.
Mark, what was the brand of that handy little sharpening?
The small ones is a Corona.
Corona.
Yeah, I had to get my dog. I used to be able to buy these things at Lowe's Hardware, but I couldn't find them. Was a Corona brand. I can't tell you the model number. Oh, it's AC 8300. And it's about $9 or so. My daughter got it for me on Amazon. So I had one. I couldn't find it, so I said, order me two. And then I found the one I have, and now I got three. That's okay. All right, questions about pruning tools? Okay, we'll move on to talking about actual pruning now. Which slide switch do we get at? All right, so you gotta have good tools. You want them to be sharp. And I don't really care if you disinfect them or not, but they want them to be sharp. Pruning with dull pruner is just aggravating. Okay. I'm not a fan of the shears. People tend to shear stuff too much, and you can get the real problems that way because you end up with about 2 inches of foliage there, and then everything underneath that has nothing. There's no leaves, anything at all, and you can get to some problems with that. Obviously, what we do want to make sure is we pick plants that fit the site, so you don't have to prune all the time. Ideally, it would be better to go that way. Elaeagnus grows crazy. So you've got those shoots come up, you're pruning this thing 3 or 4 times a year. I wouldn't pick that plant. Forsythia, have you seen those turn into bulbs? They do that in Burlington all the time. Like, what in the world are you doing to these things? Beautiful plant in a natural growth. Let it grow, and I mean, it's beautiful that way, but you shear this thing off. It's just terrible. I don't understand that at all. So we want to know about the form of the plant. So, you know, lower petal, especially, get to be big. There are some smaller varieties. Most of them get to be really big. So, if you sort of think about the shape, the form of the plant we talked about earlier, you want that form of that plant to fit your space, so you don't have to go in there and prune, or dig it up and start over again. There is a case for pruning. We do have a boxwood hedge at our office that we do shear. But the trick with that is you always want to make sure that it's wider at the base than it is at the top. If you let it go this way, then you end up with bare stems, and it's going to be unattractive. But we don't prune it so tight that there isn't some openings in there, some light air getting inside the plant. You can shear, but that's an exception rather than rule. We usually shear our boxwood hedge September sometime, so cut off a lot of new growth that tends to get burnt over the winter time. That has worked very well for us. Okay, we'll talk about different pruning cuts there. So there's a heading cut, which basically just kind of heading off the thing, and then a thinning cut where you open it up, plants, you're taking out entire stems all the way down to the ground. People tend to do a lot of heading cuts and not so many thinning cuts, so you end up with a really dense plant with a lot of stems there, and stuff starts to die. So you really need to do both kinds of cuts there when you prune. So your heading cuts can be pretty much all at the same level, or you can do some heading cuts at different heights, but they're still heading cuts depending on what you're doing. Directional pruning. So you can prune a bud, and you can turn a plant one way or the other. Anybody here have hybrid tea roses? Okay. So hybrid tea roses are beautiful, beautiful, but they're pest magnets. So people tend to buy these things in spring when they're blooming and pretty, and they have no idea that you're asking for black spot, powdery mildew, aphids, thrips, Japanese beetles, you name it. You can have it. They get to be real excited about how you prune a rose bush. You gotta look at the bud, you gotta have it not too far, not too close, right angle, this, that. I'll tell you that my dad had about 60 hybrid tea roses, but he aged out of the pruning business, and that was my job. Well, when I went in there, I got the loppers, and I'm just lopping them off, and I don't care where the bud is, it don't matter. So if you have one or two, and you want to be particular about looking at the bud and pruning like that, you can, but you don't have to. For the most part, pruning, you just go out there and prune, it's fine, it doesn't really make any difference, it's not going to kill them, you just go ahead and whack them off, and it's okay. We're getting the thinning cuts there, so we're taking out entire branches all the way down to the base, and so if you've got a plant that's been sheared or headed over a period of years, you're going to have a lot of stems coming up from the ground. The older ones are probably going to die on you, and it's going to be a mess. You really got to get these things thinned out, open them up, trying to get some air circulation through there. So pruning when? So the spring flower stuff, so our azaleas, rhododendrons, forsythia plants, all these things that are blooming now, when they get through blooming, it's time to prune. You prune them in the wintertime, you're cutting flowers off. Then our summer blooming things, you can prune now, so your crepe myrtles, you could prune now if you really felt like you had to. Pretty much any time you can take out dead, broken branches, and that's fine. There's spring bloomers there, Indian hawthorn. Indian hawthorn is one of those plants that we've used for a number of years. Seem to be pretty good. That entomosporium leaf spot that's on Virginia is now on Indian hawthorn. That looks like that's going to be a problem. I don't know how it's going to be if we get a little further down the road, but right now we're seeing a problem on Indian hawthorns with that leaf spot disease. Hydrangeas, the mop-head kind, they say bloom on old wood. And I'm not convinced, because I see these crazy things blooming in September. Is that still old wood, or is that new growth blooming? I'm not really sure. General rule of thumb is, if you prune these things in June, at that point in time, they've got enough time to put some new growth on, set some flower buds for next year, you're fine. You could prune them this time of year if you wanted to, but I would take out maybe a third, the very tallest stems. That way you've got 2/3 of stems that haven't been pruned that will flower for you. Spirulidae, but you hit those now if we want to, perfectly fine. Gardenias doesn't really matter, blooms on both wood, it's okay. Conifers are problems. Conifers are real problems. Broadleaf things, we pretty much just whack them back the way we want to. Conifers, if you cut back past the growth, you get into the old wood there, a lot of times they won't break bud and they won't put back out, and you can kill them really quick. So, arborvitae like this, Camacypris, you can do a little bit of tipping along the edges, but you can't cut that back so much. At some point in time, you're going to just pull that out and start over again, but you can't really do much with pruning those back. Okay, evergreen shrubs, overgrown shrubs, I mean, you can cut them back hard. I've done this a lot with hollies, go in there and head them back really, really hard, then you also want to come back and thin them out. So once you cut them back hard, you need to go in there and take out 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of those older canes, open that up, try and get some new growth from the base. You just can't go in there and head them off like that top picture and leave them. Because then you're going to have too much growth in there, it's going to be too thick, and you're going to end up with some disease problems. This is really hard to see. This is the environmental health building, Alamance County. Got the hollies here that are up about 10 feet high, covered over their front porch, and they had a problem for a while. They had some homeless guys sleeping up there on the porch. So when the ladies rolled in to work at 7:30 in the morning, they walked up on these guys, and they really didn't like that too much. So we cut them back down to stubs. You see now they're down about 3 feet high, so now they can see up on the porch there. Cut them back hard, they fell back out nicely, and they did really well. You can do a tree form, so if you've got stuff that gets way too big and you just can't control the height at all, you can take the lower branches off and tree form. So we've got Viburnum, Osmanthus. We've got several things in our garden that we just couldn't control the height. And they had plenty of room for them to grow, so we said, fine, you just grow. We'll take the bottom branches off and let them be a tree form, and it's work out perfectly fine. The horizontal forest, we're not going to do topping, because what happens is people think, okay, I got some branches falling on the house or whatever, I'll cut it back and I won't have the branches fall on the house. Well, that's true for a couple of years until the new growth comes out and you've got all these new sprouts, and they're very weakly attached to that stub, and so they actually break off worse than the natural growth would have been. So really no advantage in cutting it back like that. We talk on trees, you've got 2 different kinds of cuts here. So a reduction cut there, so we're trying to get some of the height. So you've got a branch here that's getting way too tall. Rather than taking it all the way out of the trunk, we can do a reduction cut right there. Take the height out and turn that growth outside. You can do a removal cut where that whole branch comes out all the way to the trunk, but you're leaving a bigger wound. So it will seal over, so it doesn't really heal. Once you've made that cut, you've got decay that forms and goes inside the trunk. The tree does a pretty good job of compartmentalizing that decay, but still you're going to have decay inside the trunk. We never want to take off more than a quarter, maybe a third at any one time, because the leaves are what feed the tree. If you take all the branches off, all the leaves off, the tree can't feed itself. So that's what happens a lot of times with these trees that have been topped. Is they put out a lot of new growth, but they cannot put out enough leaves to feed themselves over a period of 2 or 3 years. They just starve and just die. As you do removal cuts, you want to make sure that you don't do a flush cut. So back in the day, you do flush cuts here, just cut off flush right next to the trunk if you could. But there's what's called a branch collar in there, and that's where the callus tissue forms to seal over your cut. So if you cut in too close to the trunk, you'll cut that collar off and you'll end up with decay. It's easy to see on a crepe myrtle, so you can sort of see the collar here, that little swollen place there. So you cut out past that. If you cut here, make a flush cut, you've obviously got a big wound, you cut that callus collar off, and it's not going to be able to seal over very quickly at all. So there's a good cut. I think so there's callus tissue forming, so we won't say healing, it's not healing, it's just sealing over that wound. There is going to be decay that starts on that wound and work its way inside the tree. It moves fairly slowly, but you will have decay inside the tree. If you've got a stub like that, you see the callus tissue is trying to grow out and seal that over, but obviously it's harder to come out that stub and seal over, so it takes a longer time. You've got more decay in the tree because it takes so much longer to seal that over. So there's a flush cut here on the right, and you can see on the left-hand picture, we've got some callus growth on the sides, but really nothing at the top and bottom because of the flush cut there to cut that collar off. That's a problem. flush cuts there, you see where the decay is starting down in the tree. You just can't seal it over fast enough to prevent or at least slow the decay. Okay. So you've got a big branch that you're taking off, and I know you've seen this for people that have gone in there and they kind of one cut up next to the trunk, and about halfway through it breaks off and peels down the trunk, and then you've got a great big wound instead of a small wound. So the goal would be to make that first cut, the A cut, underneath, a third of the way through or so, make the B cut out about an inch or so past the first cut, and just drop the branch off. Then you're just left with a little stub that you can make the final cut just outside the collar, and that way you won't rip the bark down the trunk of the tree, which makes this big one. You can see there. So they didn't use a 3-cut, they just cut one time and ripped that bark off, and that makes a big wound that's very hard to seal over. Wound dressing. This used to be a real big thing. They had tar and all kind of paint you put on the cut, and they found out really that if anything is worse to do that, there's nothing. It's really better to leave the wound open to the air and the sun and dry. If you seal it over with that asphalt or paint, whatever it is, that holds moisture in there and really encourages the disease organism to spread. I really don't want to do wound dressing, not beneficial. Okay. Ideally, as we're buying new trees, we try to develop a central leader there. So a lot of these things we buy don't have multiple leaders. We don't really want that. It's a very weak attachment. These things will fall apart. So you need to do some pruning on them with young trees. So if you've got a competing leader there on a young tree, you would take that out completely if you could to avoid having a real narrow crotch where weak attachment and these things can break apart as the trees get older. A little hard to see here, but this tree here has multiple leaders. They've gone in here and done a reduction cut on both sides, taking that out, directing the growth out to the side. So you still got a pretty bad crotch angle right there, but since we've reduced that branch, it's not going to have so much growth and weight that it's going to be a problem down the road. We've turned it out there, takes the vigor out of that stem. It won't be a big problem for us later on. That's better than making a big wound on the trunk at this point in time of that tree. So when to prune them anytime now is good. Some of the things that are real bleeders, the maples, dogwoods, you might want to do those early summertime. So pretty much you don't want to be pruning as the leaves are coming out and as the leaves are coming off. Other than that, wintertime, summertime, you're usually going to be fine. So we do have these bleeders, so you may want to do early summer on those. The bleeding doesn't really hurt them. It's just leaking sap, but it looks kind of bad. Question on that? We've covered a lot. And there's so much. And so I tend to have a little tendency to go a little fast on this. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand off it. It's a lot. But actually does have the presentation in any case. All right. So we're talking about pest susceptibility there. We talked about the red-tip Patinia and the Entomosporium leaf spot there. Japanese euonymus will have scale. So you'll learn particular plants have particular problems. So as people call in, and it's a Japanese holly, and this thing's died 3 times in the same spot, what's that going to be? Root rot. 90% of the time it's going to be root rot. So you just know that certain plants have a certain problem. And so euonymus is going to have a scale, red tip's going to have a leaf spot. So we just know that those are going to be problems you have out there. Hybrid tea roses, you're going to have black spot. You're just going to have to. So unless you want to pay Witherspoon to come spray them, you've got to deal with that. Several years ago, we started planting a lot of knockout roses. And knockout roses, at that time, we thought were bulletproof. But now they have a rose rosette virus. Have you seen that?
Yes. Red virus.
So, it's spread by a mite. There's really no chemical control for the mite. So you got rose rosette, you cut the branch out, or you dig the plant up. So, what we thought was a really good plant 20 years ago has got some issues. Bagworms on our conifers, ledum cypress in particular, It blows my mind to go down the road and see a hedge of Leyland cypress eaten by bagworms. They start on the first tree and they just move down. I guess people just never go outside. Never. I can't figure it out because you can control them fairly easily, but you got to walk outside and look around a little bit. That's really a big thing that you need to do with the landscape. Get outside and look at stuff. A lot of these things are problems you can fix if you go outside every now and then and look at them. People will call me and say, "My tree died last night." It didn't die last night. You just saw it last night. It's been dying for months. Very few of these things die overnight. It takes a long time. The bagworms you can control easily. What I like are the BT products, the dipel thuricides. There's a bacteria that is deadly on bagworms, but it's safe. I would not spray above my head. There are other products, permethrins, things like that. Invariably, if you spray them above your head, half that's coming back in your face. If I'm having something back in my face, I'd rather have a big dipel or thuricide BT product there. That's not going to kill me. But there you go. All right. What's the major problem you have with azaleas? Insect problem.
Lace bug.
Lace bugs. Lace bugs.
Lace bugs. Oh.
Right. So people call them and say, you've got azaleas, and the leaves are kind of yellow, mottled looking. So the question there is, are they in the sun or shade? If they're in the sun, 90% of the time it's going to be lace bugs. Rarely do you ever see lace bugs on azaleas in the shade. So there's something about the chemistry and the sugars and whatnot in the leaves that you hardly ever see lace bugs on azaleas in the shade. Almost every time you'll see more lace bugs in the sun. So that's just a cultural thing. You plant them in the wrong place, dig them up, put them in shade, they'll be fine. If you leave them in the sun at that point in time, then you're going to have to get in some kind of insecticide program to control the lace bugs so you don't lose your azaleas. But right plant, right place is going to be real important there. Okay. Not a good picture. So this is the ash tree. So I had a call about this ash tree, so it burns and target parking lot. Have you heard about emerald ash borer? Talk about that. So I had a call and they said, ooh, emerald ash borer in these ash trees. So I went to look at it. That was the first report I've had, this probably 3 or 4 years ago. So I was seeing all this fresh sawdust coming out of the tree, the ground was covered in this stuff there. But it turns out this is a native clearwing ash borer. So you look at the exit hole there, so it's a round hole, you've got this fresh coming out. You don't have that with emerald ash borer. Not a problem out in the woods. So native environment, these things have evolved together over the past thousands of years, and they coexist fine. So they eat a little bit of ash, and the ashes keep growing, everybody's happy. But you put this thing in a traffic island, and it's stressed. You've got terrible soil there, probably very little bit of water, hot, dry, tree's not happy. So now you've got this clearwing ash borer there that's eating these things up because they're not happy. And they go way down into the tree, into the wood, where the emerald ash borer does not. So the emerald ash borer hole is a D-shaped exit hole, so it's pretty obvious what that is as opposed to the clearwing borer. And all the damage is right there in the canyon layer. So ash borers is here, it's coming. There really isn't a good practical control. While there is control, it's going to be expensive, and I can't find anybody who guarantees it. So I tell people, do you want to spend $500 a year to protect your ash tree forever when you have no guarantee that it's going to survive? Something else may kill it. So, I don't know. The specialists say that at some point in the future, there just won't be any ash trees around here anymore. They're just gone. I don't recommend planting ash trees anymore because of that. It's coming. All right, so we've got a holly here, burned foliage. What happened to that holly tree? holly bush. Any ideas?
Got watered, and then in the sun.
What's that?
Got watered, sprayed, and then in the hot sun.
It sort of did. So you look at it, and then, so the guy called, and he sent me a picture, like, ooh, that looks kind of bad. So I went to look at it there. So it's on the one side of the holly, but it's not on the back side. I said, well, what's happening here? He said, well, I did pressure wash my driveway with some Clorox or something. He burned it with the pressure washer. Okay, so still we're looking at right plant, right place. You know, we're just trying to minimize the inputs that we've got to put into our landscape there. We want our plants to be happy and healthy as best we can. So there is some variability there. So we know every plant has some kind of problem, and some are worse than others, but there is some variability there. The location, so if you've got roses in a shady spot, the foliage doesn't dry out fast enough in the morning. It's the same thing that happens with turf. So if you have a brown patch disease problem, it's because the foliage is staying wet too long. If you've been by a golf course and see the big fans on the greens, so they're drying the turf off. They're trying to avoid disease. They got big fans on the green to dry off the foliage in the morning to reduce diseases. I had a guy bring this in, dwarf mantina. What's wrong with it? It's got no roots. It just folds, folding every root off. I don't know why it still has leaves on it, but the fold ate every root off of that plant there. So you could have those. All right. So pest management here, so we're trying to think about proper plant selection. Obviously, that's our first goal there, is pick the plants that will be happy in that spot. Happy plants are not going to have the disease and insect problems, and plants that are unhappy that are stressed. Scouting and monitoring, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get up there and walk around and look at your stuff. A lot of people don't, and they think something happened overnight, but it's been days or weeks or months before the problem really took the plant out. If you get out there and look at it and see it's not much of a problem, you can fix it. They don't do that. Cultural practices. So just taking care of the plants, fertilize when you need to, prune when you need to, water when you need to, doing the things that the plant needs to keep it healthy and happy. Know what the pest is. That's one of the biggest problems people have. And I'm not saying you need to be an entomologist. You can let Ashley do that for you. There's a million insects out there. And it's only just like 1 or 2% of them that are plant pests. A lot of them are just kind of random bugs just living their life, and they just happen to land on your bush, and you don't need to spray them. So you've got to decide, is it really a pest? And a lot of times it's not. It could be a pest, but is it doing enough damage? So if you've got some Japanese beetles on the crepe myrtle eating a few leaves, you really care. Is it worth spraying them because they're eating a little bit of foliage? You know, does it get that threshold? So you got a threshold there where, okay, I can't take this anymore. You've got prize winning roses you're going to take to the state fair. Your threshold is pretty low. You're going to control that. If you just got random knockout roses in the backyard, you don't care. So you got to know the pest and what the threshold is. And do you really need to treat them or just live with them? We start off the biological control there, so that's going to be like a BT product. It's great on a lot of caterpillar things, work really well, and it's very, very safe. Mechanical control, what is that? Yeah, pick them off, or you dump them into a bucket of water. I got one of my organic farmers, he has a problem with squash bugs in the garden. And what he does is he puts a board down in the aisle between the squash rows, and it comes out in the morning when it's fairly early. The squash bugs will go up underneath the board at nighttime, turns it over, and he's got a propane torch. Cooks it. He says it's very satisfying. I can see how and then sort of our last resort is going to go to chemical. We don't want to spray. We don't have to spray. It's expensive. There's risk involved. You know, there may be a case where you've got some kind of problem that you can't otherwise get rid of, but you need to go through all of these steps before you pull out the chemicals, and people tend to, at least in Alamance County, they see something on a leaf, whether it's a spot or a bug or whatever. The first thing they do is go get the liquid 7 out of the garage and spray it. And they call and say, well, I sprayed it with liquid 7 and it didn't help. Well, it may have been a disease, which it wouldn't have touched at all. And there are insects that liquid 7 won't kill anyway. So that's not the first thing to do. Figure out what it is and decide what your management method needs to be. What is this? Is that a bad guy?
No.
No. Right. Well, that's a baby bee. So the people would see that and go, ooh, that's an ugly looking thing. Well, it's not doing any damage, just eating some aphids and living his life. And you don't really go out there and kill him. That's a good bug to have. Some people don't feel like that. Of course, it goes back to these people. So we had a little discussion about marketing. So they're the champions of marketing products. They've got a product for everything, whether it's a problem or not a problem, and mislead consumers terribly over what you need to do and what you don't need to do. Very confusing. So that's a big challenge for us, is to tell people, all right, let's figure out the problem. Okay, now once we identify the plant and the problem, what's your threshold? Can you stand and have a few leaves eaten? Do you really need to control them? Maybe not. They don't do that there. But if you're going to buy a product, so you decided, okay, I've got some aphids, insecticidal soap works great on aphid sulfide insects there. So you can buy it in a concentrate like this, and that costs you about $1 an ounce for that product. I like to do a little bit of math. You can buy a ready-to-use insecticidal soap. At that rate, it costs you $34 an ounce. It's only 1% soap. It's 99% water. Okay. If you got one plant, then maybe you would buy ready-to-use. If you got more than one plant, I'm not so sure. We look at our friend Liquid 7 there, concentrate about $3 there. When you buy the ready-to-use 7, you're at $173 an ounce for active ingredients. So it's almost 99% water. No, more than 99% water. So if you're thinking about sustainability and any of this kind of stuff, most all of us have water. And you got a teaspoon, you buy a little $10 pump-up sprayer, you can buy the concentrate and not do this. So we have, twice a year, we have a paint and pesticide collection day. By far, the highest volume of anything we collect are ready-to-use empty jugs. It's ridiculous. How much of this stuff that people buy, and then they dispose of them. We've got to dispose of this stuff somewhere. So I would say ready-to-use products are not a good thing to buy unless you just have to. And unfortunately, insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, all this stuff are packaged and ready to use, and it's 99% water, and then it's waste. How about Bambi? Who likes deer? We have people move back to the country and, oh, I love nature. This is beautiful, and Bambi out there, until Bambi gets into the hosta, azaleas, whatever, and then they don't care for Bambi so much. I went to see a lady, and she's having a Bambi problem there, and she had a unique solution to her Bambi control. She put cages around individual shrubs. Now, that's great Bambi control, and I would say aesthetically, no. I'm not a fan of that. So we discussed, maybe you could find plants that the deer don't prefer. So they can eat about anything, but cages around your individual shrubbery seems... Of course, she had plenty of weeds too, so... I would say she was not a yard person at all. Maybe the best thing to do is just pull up the shrubbery and just forget it. Okay. We talk about mulching here. So mulching is another thing where people run into some trouble. With mulch, again, it's one of those things where you tell them 2 inches of mulch is good. They go, well, a foot of mulch must be better. Regular just load this stuff up. And of course, you have landscape companies that are being paid to put out mulch, so naturally they'll put out mulch. We want to make sure, ideally, organic mulch. I do see a lot of brick chips and stones and that kind of thing. It's fine if you like that stuff. It's kind of subjective. I'd rather have organic mulch than I would brick chips. Back in the day, we used to use a lot of black plastic. So that's going to keep the weeds down and won't be any kind of problem at all. It's a problem. So what it turns out is that if you have Bermuda grass, it grows till it gets to the hole where the plant is, and then it grows up there and you can't pull it out. Holds moisture in so it stays too wet. It can stay too dry. After a period of time, you'll start getting weeds growing in the mulch on top of the black plastic. They lose to what they call landscape fabrics, are supposed to be permeable, but they got moisture going back and forth. It really haven't worked out so well either. I really not have any kind of fabric plastic there. It really, you could do a better job preparing the soil, mulching, full few weeds every now and then. Not that big. Question?
On the previous slide to that one, where you were talking about non-manning, what would be the characteristics of mulch that would be non-manning?
So something like pine bark or pine needles. So hardwood mulch, I don't know if I got a slide of hardwood mulch or not, probably not. Hardwood mulch, very, very popular. Hardwood mulch has some real problems. So it does tend over a period of time to compact and mat and can repel water. It also grows slime mold really, really well. So it's dog vomit molds, slime molds. Also grows artillery fungus very, very well. So it'll shoot spores out on your car or on the side of your house, and it's like tar. Almost impossible to get off. Now, if you like to look hardwood mulch, that's fine. What I recommend is you go out there about once a month and rake it around, break up that mycelium, don't let that fungus grow enough to where it wants to produce spores and cause a problem. So you can do that, but it does have some limitations. So I prefer pine bark and pine needles. I think that's better.
Any experience with a biodegradable cover? There's a corn-based one.
Yeah, I've only seen that.
Go away in a year.
Yeah, I've always seen that used in ag production, not on landscape. Yeah, I don't know why it'd be. I don't know why it'd be bad. I don't know what the advantage would be.
We just did not eat
And
for that season.
maybe.
How do you buy the pine bark vat in bulk?
Some places, landscape supply places will have that. So I always recommend, I want to go see it and touch it before I order it. So we didn't talk about topsoil, but there are no regulations that know all saying what topsoil is. So if you call this one place, you say topsoil, what they bring you will be different from what another place will bring you. So really, the topsoil, you need to go look at it. I do the same thing for mulch too, because it's going to vary from place to place. You need to go look at it, touch it.
What do you recommend? Like you say, finely shredded. You say.
Right.
Is that a good kind?
Yeah, so a lot of this, at least on pine bark, is kind of personal preference. So you get the nuggets that are good sized chunks, and you can get all the way down to a mini nugget and into what they call pine bark fines, which is very, very small and ground up like that. So a lot of that's personal preference. The smaller stuff will wash and blow where the bigger chunks won't. But it's kind of personal preference.
How about the bags from big box stores? Do they have good pine bark?
Sometimes. Sometimes. What I have seen is they've started treating the stuff with herbicide. I'm not a fan of that. So they got to be careful.
Would it say that on the bag?
Yes.
Yeah.
It has to. Yeah. But you will see that herbicide treated mulch, and I'm not a fan of that.
We're looking at mulch right now, and they have cypress, shredded, pine, shredded cypress.
I think that's fine.
But they also offer dye, what is it?
So what they do with the dyed mulch, a lot of times is ground up pallets, and then they dye it. And sometimes the dye lasts, sometimes the dye doesn't last, but if that pallet is a raw wood, which is okay to put on top of the ground. I don't prefer it. So I'd rather have time on it. I do. Okay. So the thing that just drives me wild in the fall is to see people have a big natural area in the front yard. They rake up all the leaves, put it out on the curb. It gets sucked up by the city. Then they go buy pine needles to mulch the natural area. I say leave the leaves in the natural area. That's good mulch. Cover them with just a little bit of pine needles, and it looks great. I had to use leaves in my garden. I didn't have trees, so I had to go collect leaves from some of my master gardeners. So yeah, I wanted to have leaves, and now I got some trees, got some leaves. I put them in the natural area and just pile them. Anything that comes off the yard goes in the natural area. I'll go out sometime next week or two, put out some fresh pine needles. It'll look great until next fall. But I've got the benefit of those leaves there. It'll save me some money of having to buy pine needles. Okay, you've heard of volcano mulch?
Yes.
Volcano mulch. Okay. Have you heard of Metamont, Chapel Hill?
Yeah.
This is Metamont. This is back 2007 or 8, somewhere there. So I had a call, and the guy said, we think we got a problem with this, about 600 street trees down here, and they all had been mulched like this. I said, yeah, you've got a problem. So we started digging around there, and you start pulling this back, and the mulch is up 12 inches on the trunk. You can see we've got roots growing in the mulch there. And I said, you got to basically come up here and pull that mulch away from every tree, every street in the whole subdivision, or you're going to lose those trees at some point in time. That's really bad. The other thing you'll see here, it's a little hard to see here, you've got a girdling root. So scaffold roots coming out like this, girdling roots coming there. Sometimes that's not a big problem. The scaffold root will graft into the girdling root, but some trees it won't. Some trees will actually choke that root off, and then you can have a real problem with that. So you got to pull back all the mulch, pull back the soil, trying to find the scaffold roots, cut off any girdling roots there. It's a pretty big job. Okay. Staking transplants, sometimes you stake them, sometimes you don't need to stake them. The problem people have with staking trees is they forget to take the stake material off. So you get a situation like this where the tree's grown over of the hose, and now you've got a real issue with that. And that's going to obviously be a very weakly attached branch. It's probably pop off at some point in time there. The tree's completely run around that. At some point in time, that's likely to break too. Really need to be paying attention. So if you're going to stake a tree, you probably is only going to have stakes on it for maybe a year, maybe. Go back and loosen if you have to. So I took the rope off there, but it was a little too late. So it got some damage on the trunk, and there you go. Wow, actually got it done. So, I know that's a lot of stuff in a real short period of time. Yes, ma'am.
So can you tell me about planting after tree removal? You've had the tree removed, you've had the stump ground, you know that's only down a little bit too far. But I've heard conflicting things about how soon you might be able to work that area.
So everything that was ground up should come out of the hole. And you should backfill that hole with a good native soil. So you leave all that wood in there as it decays, you're going to have nitrogen deficiencies, it's going to settle, make a void. It's just everything needs to come out and put in good native soil.
So you think it can happen as soon as you are at the depth where you no longer run into trunk, and it's fine, just go ahead.
Right. So you'll have roots that are still there, would decompose, and you'll have some place that will settle over a period of time.
Right.
But as long as you get all that ground up stuff out, usually going to be in pretty good shape.
I have a question about the deer.
Sure.
Do you know anything about deer tape that you put around the house?
Yeah, so deer tape works pretty well. The repellents, like the hinder and deer off, work pretty well. But it's usually for a short period of time. So after a while,
You reapply the chemical.
yeah, the chemical you have to reapply fairly regularly. The deer tape, some of those scare things, after a while, they can get accustomed to it. So initially you scare them a couple times, and then after a while they figure out nothing's getting them. And it doesn't work that way.
But I thought the smell would be what.
The smell works pretty good for a while, but you have to keep on reapplying that. That works. Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with lipstick salvia? It's a woody perennial actually, but it's very shrub-like. Okay,
I don't know that one.
I was just curious about pruning that. How
Yeah, nah, I don't know. So have you seen Michael Durr's Woody Plant book? You got that here in the office? So you start looking at that.
Which was that?
Michael Durr, manual.
It's a
Yeah.
great
Anyway,
big
so you look at that, and it's like you're looking at hydrangeas. There's 800 varieties of hydrangeas, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. And I can't keep up. After 40 years, there's too many plants out there. Really, you just can't know them all. Other questions? You learned it all. Actually, can you give you a test? Maybe not.
All right, well, let's thank